You know what? Let's get into it right now with Tom Hamilton, voice of the Guardians. But let's start with the good stuff. Tom joining us. Tom, great to see you. I spent some time last year meeting you when I was with Yonder Alonso calling a game and had a great time. And I was like, AJ, we got to get Tom on. I know you've had a lot of attention this weekend. So congrats on a great call. I know you probably are going to understate things, but it's hard to do it in the moment. So take us through it, Tom. How you doing?
Well, good. Thank you, Scott and AJ and Eric. I appreciate you having me on. And I'm not real comfortable with this because it isn't about me. It's about Jose. And I think, guys, one thing we learned, we always hear about 5-tool players. We now have the first 6-tool player in Jose Ramirez based on that right hook. So I think the biggest thing about that, guys, is it shows why Jose Ramirez is revered in that clubhouse. This was all about him sticking up for a couple of youngsters, Gabriel Arias and Brian Rocchio, who had been dealing with some of the issues with Tim Anderson starting back in the series in Chicago and things that were being said by Tim to those guys. And with a tag play on Friday night, it got to the point that the umpire Saturday night had gone into the White Sox dugout and told Tim to knock it off. Now, again, you're hearing the Cleveland side of the story, and this is based on my talking to players and coaches and whatnot Sunday morning, because quite honestly, I didn't know that any of this had been, the undercurrent, so to speak, because quite frankly, nor should we know this. As Eric and AJ know, what goes on in the clubhouse stays in the clubhouse, or at least it should. Now, when everything escalated Saturday night, you were like, what the heck was this all about? Well, now you know. But again, that was Jose Ramirez showing Tim Anderson, or anybody else for that matter, that look, you're not going to bully the rookies on this ball club, and I'm going to stand up for them just like I would for Josh Naylor or Shane Bieber or any other veteran.
And so Jose Ramirez is Cleveland Guardians baseball. He signed that long-term contract. He playing with him in spring training in 2017. He really feels comfortable in a Cleveland uniform. Is he a little, you feel like he's a little pissed because they got rid of Aaron Savali, one of his buddies, Ahmed Rosario, another veteran in Josh Bell, and now this team is 4 games out of the first place in the Central?
Well, there's no question, Eric, that the veterans in particular were upset by the trade deadline and what went on. And that's why, Chris and Cherney have always been, and so has Tito, transparency rules when it comes to this organization and the culture that's been created. And while Chris and Cherney couldn't be there on Tuesday when the trading deadline was, coming to an end, they hopped a 6:30 flight on Wednesday morning, even though we had a day game in Houston, to make sure that these guys could talk to them face to face. They could air out whatever grievances or feelings that they had. They could ask questions as to what direction this is, indicating that the ball club is going. And, I think Cherney and Chris deserve a lot of credit for doing that because, quite frankly, they could have waited. But Thursday was going to be an off day. Then the homestand was starting on Friday. And they felt like we need to get down there and let these guys know why this happened and let them say whatever they want to say. Now, whether they agree with it or not, you guys have been in clubhouses. Look, when you're a veteran, everything is about winning today. But when you're also a front office, you've got to be able to balance today with tomorrow. And quite honestly, guys, realistically, the numbers may say you're in this race. This is not a playoff team. Not without Shane Bieber, Tristan McKenzie, and Cal Quantrill, your 3 top starters, who are not going to be back until sometime in September. There was no way that this was going to be feasible. You've got 3 rookies in the rotation. You're going to have to monitor their innings, and they're going to have to be probably limited as we go down the stretch because you can't hurt their future. So I know how the perception is. I know how it looks as far as, man, they're only a few games out. They're caving in. They're not really caving in. They just also felt like you've got to be realistic. As much as they did not want to trade Aaron Savali, the thing with Aaron is that over the last 3 years, including this year, he's missed anywhere from 2 to 3 months with various injuries. And It was a feeling like we better sell high on this, not knowing if he can stay healthy down the road. They know he's a good pitcher, but to get an impact bat like they feel like they got, you have to give something up of quality, and that's what they had to do to get Mansardo. How does this work out? Well, as you guys know, when you trade for prospects, you can't judge a trade for 4 or 5 years, and so we'll see. But I think the bottom line is, guys, if Bieber, McKenzie, and Quantrill were healthy and pitching the way they did a year ago, this is a totally different scenario at the trade deadline.
Tom, I love what I love. You didn't get to probably hear us earlier when we were talking about the whole fight situation on Saturday and how I love what Jose Ramirez did. He stood up, gave his side of the story, and said, "This is what happened. I'm standing up for my boys. You're the unquestioned leader on that team, no doubt." And he did it. I love it. And then you have Tito, who goes to the mic and says his side of the story, and he kind of made a joke out of it. He's like, "I don't mean to be funny, but here it is," right? So to me, Tito Francona is schooling the White Sox and the way they dealt with this. You get Pedro Grifol, who's going, "I don't want to talk about it. I'll let Major League Baseball handle it." And you got Tito saying, "Yeah, Jose's our leader. He stood up for our guys." There has to be a pretty good feeling inside the Cleveland clubhouse and organization that, hey, not only does Jose Ramirez have our back, but Terry Francona pretty much stood up for our whole team and said, "You want to fight? Well, here's our Mike Tyson, right? He's coming out to get you." I mean, that's a great feeling as a player.
I think it is, and I think and again, I'm only looking at it from Cleveland's side. One, I really like Pedro Grifol. I've known him since he was a coach with the Kansas City Royals. I think he's a high caliber human being. I think he's going to be a really good manager. I think you also have the advantage of Tito being a veteran, and when you've accomplished what Tito has accomplished, you've got a little more leeway to say and do things than maybe somebody that's their first year as a manager. But you're right, AJ. Look, there's a reason why people want to play for Tito. And I don't want to disparage any manager that has been in the game before this, but I've never seen anybody like Tito that connects with every walk of life, not only in that clubhouse, but when we went to the World Series in 2016, in 2017, Tito said, "I want to make sure that anybody that wants a picture of the American League championship trophy and want that picture with me is able to get it." But he goes, "That means everybody. That means the people that clean the ballpark. That means the people that are maybe in the janitorial service department of this ballpark." There was no, "You're not good enough to get a picture with Tito in the trophy." He means everybody. So Tito has never thought he is above anybody. And I think that creates a culture. And again, I'm preaching to the choir. Scott and I weren't good enough to be pro players like AJ and Eric, but you guys know in a clubhouse when you feel like your manager has your back, and that, I just think there's never been a better manager that I've seen than Tito.
Hey, I've got a follow-up here for you from Travis, who said, "Tom mentioned Tim Anderson harassing guards rookies in previous series. First I've heard of that. Can we get a follow-up on that?" Are you talking about in this series, the situation with Rocchio and Arias, or there was also prior beef?
Yeah, and again, Scott, I want to be real careful here because I don't want to come across like I'm burying Tim Anderson, because I think this guy has been one of the best hitters we have had in the American League over the last 7-8 years. And he's won a batting title. He was a guy that you never wanted to see up there with the game on the line, because I know how many big hits he's had against Cleveland. So I want to be real careful on that. I'm only telling it from what I've been told from our players. And we had back-to-back series with Chicago on the last road trip in here. I didn't know any of this until talking yesterday, but Rocchio was going first to third on a ball hit to right field in Chicago, turned back to try to see where the ball was, and Anderson thought he was looking at him. So Anderson had things to say to Gabriel Arias, and so that didn't sit very well. Look, I mean, these ball clubs have played each other a lot. There were things that were said last year, even by Elvis Andrus, saying that this Cleveland ball club would crumble when it came to crunch time, in the pennant stretch there or the division stretch in September. So, that's part of baseball. Things are going to be said. These guys are competitors. But it seemed like in Hosey's mind, let me just say it that way. Hosey felt like some of the youngsters, there was an attempt to maybe bully them a little bit. And again, this is the Cleveland side of the story. But again, if you're a teammate of Hosey or a guy like Josh Naylor, they're gonna go to war for you. And I hate to use that metaphor, but I mean, you saw Josh Naylor out there with an oblique injury, and he said, "I don't care. I'm out there to defend my teammates." And so that's where I didn't realize that this had been percolating since last week, and then it continued with some of the verbal stuff that was being said. At least that's what Cleveland said. Again, I'm sure Chicago has a side of this that we haven't heard as well. But again, that's why we were shocked because you didn't look at the play at second base with a head first slide and think anything unusual happened there. But as you heard Hosey say after the game, he felt like, and he had said to Tim Anderson, "You're disrespecting the game with some of the things you're doing. I don't like some of the slap tags and the hard tags that you're doing. No one wants to get hurt out here. We're trying to provide for our families." And so I think Hosey felt like it was up to him to get that message across, initially verbally, and then I don't think anybody thought it was going to happen. But once Tim Anderson dropped the glove, you're like, oh, okay. And then, guys, how about Malachi Moore, the second base ump? It was almost like he said, "Okay, you guys, you've touched gloves. I'm out of here. You guys go at it." That was
Tom, by the way, don't forget the Guardians last year said "F the White Sox." Remember when they celebrated
Yes.
their division? They were chanting
That's
"F the White Sox."
saying,
So there's a lot of layers to this whole thing.
Yep.
But I want to know. You mentioned Elvis Andrus. You guys pissed him off because he gets a hit, like 4 hits a game against Cleveland. You guys should sign him because he might win the batting title like 40 years old. So before we move on, you guys stop talking shit about Elvis.
I'm telling you, AJ, I said it on the broadcast yesterday. If this guy played here 81 games, he'd be on his way to Cooperstown. He's hit like 380 lifetime in this ballpark. He is a guy that I have so respected his game from all the times he's played with the Texas Rangers. And he played shortstop yesterday again, like he was 25, not 35. And you're right, AJ. And again, I'm glad this pointed out. Look, there's been chirping down through the years on both sides, whether it's Cleveland saying stuff, whether it's Chicago saying stuff. This is never just a one-sided story. There's always two parts of it, and I'm not saying anybody.
We haven't heard their side. That's the problem. We haven't heard them say anything. Like, come out and give us something. Give me Tim Anderson. Give me something. Pedro Grifol. I want to hear something. Don't dodge it.
Yeah, I'm guessing we will as time goes by, and I'm also guessing that Tim Anderson and Jose Ramirez are going to get a vacation they don't want because we still haven't heard anything from Major League Baseball. I also have not seen our lineup yet. Normally our lineup's already been posted. So I get a feeling we're still waiting to hear from Major League Baseball on what the suspensions are going to be. I mean, Rougned Odor, when Jose Bautista challenged him and it was a one-punch knockout as well, Odor got 8 games. That's been a few years. But I'm guessing both Ramirez and Anderson are going to get something similar.
All right, now this is back to your call, not just the fight, your call of it. Because Tito said post-game, he's like, yeah, kind of got, how can you not chuckle? Hammy had a good call. Did you ever think like in this, like through this situation, or was it just you just watching the play and like, down goes Anderson?
Eric, I'm probably dating myself by using that phrase because there may be a lot of kids today and maybe even yourself who, are like, who the heck was Howard Cosell and who's George Foreman? Isn't he the guy that has a grill? And but I mean, for those of us that grew up in that era, I mean, that's one of the great calls of all time by Howard Cosell with George Foreman and Joe Frazier, who looked unbeatable until George Foreman destroyed him in that fight. No, you're not thinking about. First off, I've never yet come to a ballpark going, I bet there'll be a brawl tonight. What am I going to say? So I just got lucky, and the words happen to pop in to my head. And trust me, there have been plenty of other times you leave that booth going, oh my gosh, why in the world did I say that? So I make mistakes on a nightly basis, and every once in a while you get lucky.
Have you ever wanted to call a boxing match or a fight or something like
No,
that? No.
no, I grew up with four brothers or three brothers, and we did enough of that fighting in the backyard. So that's as close as I want to get to that. But and Tito's right. I mean, we don't want the game to get down to this. But by the same token, guys, I'm sure you've been involved in them as well. This is the first time we really had a baseball brawl and a fight. This thing kept escalating. There kept being brush fires after that you thought was really going to erupt into something else. And so I think we're looking at a few things here. It's August. It's hot. Guys are tired. Both teams are frustrated. Both teams made a lot of deals at the deadline where a lot of veteran players were traded away. And so I think it was a culmination of a lot of things. And, they call it the dog days of August for a reason. I tell you one thing, there isn't anybody that ever left this park on Saturday night going, man, I wish that game would have been 2.5 hours, because the fight took 14 minutes and that's counted into time of game. So I don't know if Major League Baseball is going to come down on us for extending the game too long, but everybody was entertained.
Yeah, we're trying to get more action. We got more action there, so we were good. If we throw out the clock for a sec. Okay, so Tom, and again, I'll say this because you've been one of my favorite broadcasters for a long
Thank you.
time. You've been calling games for Cleveland since I believe it was 1990. I looked up here, Ford Frick finalist. You'll get in there into the hall at some point. How does it affect you or make you feel that you've made so many big calls in Cleveland history? You've got your signature call, swinging a drive, but because this went so ultra viral, this will be one of the calls in the moments that you are known for. Like, does that sit okay with you? Obviously, you nailed it and it was fun, and you talk about that all the time. But this is something that you're going to run into people, especially that are not Cleveland fans, people on different coasts that don't listen or watch Cleveland baseball. They're going to bring this up. AJ had, a great rant earlier about how Tim Anderson and really Jose Ramirez will be, will go up to fans for a long time, and this is going to be brought up. AJ's dealt with that with him in the Barrett situation. So just wanted to get your reaction to that. We're super fresh off the call, but there will always be moments that you'll go up to fans and they'll be like, Tom, that call did it for me.
It is what it is, Scott. I mean, I'm not on social media. If I had a Twitter account, I would have been fired, I don't know, probably 5 days after Twitter had been invented. And so I'm smart enough to know not to get on social media. I also know that you're also 5 minutes away from your career coming to an end, because you could be on the other side of that and say something you regret and that blows up. So you can't get caught up into it. You tell your own kids that when it comes to social media, my goodness, be careful. Be careful what you're doing out there, because there are too many times people are apologizing for what they've done or what they've said or tweeted or whatever else you're doing now. So I don't get caught up in that. I'm so grateful to have this job. I was born on a dairy farm in Wisconsin. I'm not baling hay anymore. That's work. This isn't work. I've been so blessed and fortunate to have this job for such a long time. If that's what you're remembered for, that's fine. I mean, there were plenty of sleepless nights, be it in 2016 or in 97, when you're maybe not sleepless nights, but the night before Game 7 of a World Series, you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to say if we win this thing? And I'm not a big believer in writing things out, because about the time something happens, you're looking for whatever you wrote and you can't find it, and then you've butchered it. So you just hope you're not remembered for butchering a call. And if people like this, I'm grateful for that. But I also know, again, we're about 4.5 hours away from tonight's game. I'm 4.5 hours away from saying something I go, oh my God, what did I do? So you better realize, as Sandy Alomar had said, and you players know this, baseball is a game for those that are humble and those that are about to be humbled. And you remember that every night when you step in front of that microphone.
Yeah, well, you nailed that one, Tom. It was entertaining for everyone, and thanks for coming on short notice with us. We wanted to have you on for a while, so appreciate it, and have fun with this one tonight. We'll see who's in the lineup for you in a little bit.
Okay. Thanks so much, guys. Great being
Thanks,
with you.
Sammy.
Cheers,
Thanks,
Sammy.
guys.
Appreciate you.